Hi, everyone, and welcome to Dragon Quest Slime Time, a Dragon's Den podcast. This is your host, Pendy.
And this is Liam Land. What say you, Pendy? Art thou ready to engage on a Godzilla quest and talk about Koichi Sugiyama's music and Godzilla versus Biollante?
I am. Never before have I been this excited to see the mashup of the Dragon Quest and Godzilla franchises. Especially compared to that time we stood between the Dragon Quest Island and Godzilla theme parks in Awaji and heard both themes playing at the same time, which was hilarious.
Indeed. Yeah, it's the only place where you could fight a Dragon Quest final boss and zipline through Godzilla's mouth at the same park.
Joining us today are recurring Slime Time host, delicious Dwaine Bullock and EastX.
Hey.
Hi.
So we can't begin talking about Godzilla without the time-honored tradition of the Godzilla Roar contest. So here's how this works. Each of us is going to attempt to make a Godzilla roar with our own voices, and it will be judged by an official panel of Godzilla noise experts who will award the winner with absolutely nothing.
Nice.
Pendy, if you would...
That's what I've always wanted.
Yeah. Pendy, if you'd please do the honors and go first.
Okay. I gotta prepare myself for this. Okay. Roar. That's fine.
All right, Dwaine, you're up next.
All right, let me back up from the microphone just a little bit.
I don't know what
my
that is.
phlegm feels looser
What's
now.
that?
Nice.
Yeah. Which end did that come out of?
A little bit of both.
I can imagine. Okay, now your turn, EastX.
Hey. Screonk.
Nice. Okay, here I go.
Was that Godzilla or a goat?
And by surprise appearance, we have Platty M3 with his Godzilla impression. All right, let's hear it, Platty. What?
Yeah, that doesn't sound like him at all.
I prefer Godzilla, actually. I want that to be a movie now.
Okay, nice try, everybody. Folks, please head to @DQ Slime Time on the socials and tell us who you thought did the best roar. And please be kind to Platty. He is trying. So, to recap in a mostly spoiler-free, corporate spies and a made-up country clash in an attempt to steal samples of Godzilla's cells, recovering after the battle from Godzilla 1984, aka The Return of Godzilla. Meanwhile, the King of Monsters battles a kaiju called Biollante, created from a combination of Godzilla's cells, the cells of a plant, and the cells/soul of a deceased scientist named Erica.
The Japanese Self-Defense Force hopes to pit the two monsters against each other, knowing that they will need to also then face the winner of the battle. Along the way, we meet a series of interesting characters, including a girl with the ESP who can hear plants talk and sense both Godzilla and the spirit of Erica and Biollante.
That's right. There's a spy from the kingdom of Saradia with a catchy name SSS-9, played by Manjot Bioy, a trigger-happy assassin sporting a mullet and sunglasses, and a series of goons from a U.S. corporate terrorist group called Biomajor, who threaten to spitefully release Godzilla from being trapped if they're not given his cells.
Additionally, a group of scientists hash out a plot to create an anti-nuclear energy bacteria to attempt to poison Godzilla and render his atomic breath null.
There's so much going on in this movie. So the idea actually originated from a public story writing contest, which we'll get into later, and it set a trend common to the Heisei era of Godzilla movies, where rival kaiju are capable of metamorphosizing into new, progressively more powerful forms. It's interestingly similar to how Dragon Quest final bosses change their forms as you battle them.
This isn't even my final form. So, to kick it off for everyone, what were your thoughts when you heard Koichi Sugiyama's soundtrack in the setting of a Godzilla film? And Dwaine, we'll start with you.
So this is kind of funny because if you hadn't told me about this beforehand, I would have been listening to it and thought, this sounds like a Dragon Quest soundtrack. That they just straight up ripped just samples that they had, and because so many of the tracks in this film fit perfectly in with a Dragon Quest game. I guess I've never really done a super deep dive into Sugiyama's music, but I guess he certainly has a style, and it really shines through with this. Just the kind of the quieter and more somber themes, and the battle themes that sound exactly like a Dragon Quest boss theme. But there's also, it's one of the themes that I don't know if anyone else has picked up on this. There is a hook that sounds a lot like the Dragon Quest IV march when you finally get all the party members.
Mm-hmm. I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, because the first time I was watching this, I was working at the same time, and I heard that, and that made me kind of, wait a minute, what? Oh, no, it's fine. It's before all that.
EastX, what do you think?
Well, one of the things that I like about this soundtrack is that it uses the classic Godzilla theme quite a lot. And not only do you get like kind of the regular bombastic version, but I believe there's different interpretations to match the moods of different scenes. And I really love the Godzilla theme, as a lot of fans do, you know. And like if we think of Godzilla -1, I believe it's only used twice, but comparatively in Biollante, it's probably used like 8 or 10 times, you know. So
Every time he pops up, pretty much.
yeah, exactly. So I like that. That's fun to me. But the rest of the music is definitely pleasant, and it would fit in a Dragon Quest game, like you said. But like, I didn't get to listen to the soundtrack independently, so I mean, it's good music, but it doesn't like automatically, I don't know, catch my heartstrings or something to where I'm like, wow, this is just the best Godzilla soundtrack ever.
Liam, what about you?
So yeah, this is the third time I saw it, and just hearing that opening score, it just feels so much like the way he scores for like the final bosses, like Dwayne said, and it just kind of made me laugh a little because it made me think of like Godzilla. What if Godzilla was like a final boss in a Dragon Quest game? I guess it would be more like Shin Godzilla because he had like multiple forms.
For me, I would say the first track from Sugiyama that pops up after they start with the Godzilla theme, but that track where the guitars are ripping along was great. It kind of reminded me of like a modernized Dragon Quest boss battle. There's a scene where it starts with a young couple talking about Godzilla before transitioning to the doctor's plant lab and his experiments. It starts out with like a lone piano playing, and then it expands. I really like that track. That's one of my favorites. And then when Biollante first shows up, I definitely recognize Sugiyama's signature style there. It was like people have already said, it was like a traditional Dragon Quest battle theme. Also, that little bit of that made-up pop song before Godzilla hits Osaka, that was fantastic. I actually was disappointed. I wanted to hear the rest of it. I was like, no, don't cut the song off. It gave me like Dragon Quest II love song Only Lonely Boy vibes, if you've heard the pop version of it, like the menu music that's in Dragon Quest II. You know, Sugiyama is very capable of composing pop songs when he's tasked with it. So that was a little fun little tidbit to hear that.
There's a pop version of that track?
Yeah, you've never heard that before?
I have not. This is new to me, and I'm scared.
It's a fun little 80s jam. It's the same music but just like more poppy, and it's got the singer that's doing the song. I'll put it in the show notes for this.
Yeah, I'll check it out.
I'll put it in the show notes for this too. Dwayne, you had mentioned like the little Dragon Quest IV like marching theme that you recognize. I think that was like when they're running up to the overturned truck and they're just going dun 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 dun. Yeah, that had a very like to me it actually felt like a upbeat like Dragon Quest VIII feel. But I do see where you're coming from for it sounding like the Dragon Quest IV marching theme.
Yeah, I mean I don't think it's intentional. All musicians have like little hooks and just like little small compositions that they kind of like keep tucked away. So he may have just done something slightly similar, I think. And I can't believe I have made it this far into the podcast without doing a John Mayer reference. But there's a song that he almost put on one of his albums, but it sounded just close enough to a Bob Dylan song, and he's like, you know what? No, I'm just gonna shelf this track. So it
didn't want to get dude.
But it just sounded too close. And I've listened to both songs, and while I think they both sound very, very different, there is this one like little hook, and I'm like, okay, I get it.
Yeah, and like none of the music in here sounds like carbon copy paste of anything that he's done in Dragon Quest, or like
no.
But you can definitely hear his style at least in a lot of this stuff. Overall, the soundtrack I thought was decent, but among like all of his work, I don't see myself like ever buying the soundtrack. But that's my opinion on that.
I don't either, but because it's available on YouTube.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah,
there you go.
So definitely check that out because it's very possible that the full version of that pop song made it on there. You never know if it leaked out there because it's the actual soundtrack and not the movie dialogue over it.
Oh, that's cool. Nice.
Yeah. Does anyone think you would have noticed it was Sugiyama's style if you watched the movie not knowing he composed it?
Oh yeah, for me, absolutely. Not every piece of the soundtrack is instantly recognizable, but there is, like I was saying before, there's definitely some tracks that are very much in the vein of his style that he used before and after on Dragon Quest.
How about you, EastX?
No, I don't think I would have noticed. I mean, like to me, it sounds like typically Japanese Japanese music for the era, like things that I would hear not just in Dragon Quest, but a lot of Japanese style games. And
Oh yeah, it does use the sound effects package that every live action, every anime uses. So yeah, the one the one bird, the wind sounds and all that. Yep,
a little bit of disco beat in there too sometimes.
Here it's making a comeback.
In Japan in 1989 it was.
Yeah, but I mean, knowing that it comes from Sugiyama does add a little extra layer of coolness to the experience.
Yeah, I agree. Dwayne, how about you?
Oh yeah, I definitely would have done the Leo meme, like there it is, and then I would have gone to the IMDb and looked it up, and I'm like, oh yep, I knew it.
Yeah, I think there definitely are some similarities and some differences from his usual style, kind of mixed in with the Godzilla themes. I probably would have noticed some of it was similar to DQ, even if I didn't immediately know. But I think he does a really good job at like aligning his style to like Godzilla's appearance in the battles and everything, as well as like Requiem music when Erica dies or Biollante's first form is burning from Godzilla's atomic breath. Like it's very similar to how he wrote like the Requiem music for the Dragon Quest series, the main line.
It does sound a lot like Dragon Quest 4, but I think given the time the movie that came out, he was probably that's kind of in a similar time frame.
Yeah,
this came out in 1989, I think, if I'm remembering right. And what, Dragon Quest 1 came out in 87? Six.
Yeah,
but
what about
fan.
4?
I'm fired.
4 was what? Was 4 1990?
91?
I think it was 91 here.
Oh.
Yeah, it was 1990 in Japan.
Okay. Yeah. So what were everybody's favorite moments from the movie? Dwayne, we'll start with you.
So this is just a bonkers movie, and I like how it's just 3 different random ideas that shouldn't work, but it somehow does, and they play it with a straight face. But I have to say my favorite character overall is the secret agent, because he is just living his best life throughout this entire movie. And I love the American van. Oh, please remind me what it was called. Because it wasn't Federal Express. Was it like Package Express or something like that?
Panda Express or something. I can't remember.
It was like Parcel Express. It was something. It was very much not FedEx at the time, and it was just great. It's just enough to not get sued. Yeah, and I liked the American stereotypes just because how ridiculous they were.
Yeah, definitely. I had a similar idea, but I did want to point out that just from what we were just talking about in terms of like when this movie came out in, I think, December 1989, and then 2 months later in February 1990 is when Dragon Quest 4 came out for Famicom. So the fact that he was probably writing the music for both around the same time,
now that makes sense.
A lot of sense.
Makes sense.
Yeah, this movie is very quotable. In particular, I love the Asian interpretation of foreign dialogue. Like, so if you watch Squid Game, you got to see what Koreans think rich foreign assholes sound like. It's similarly awkward to how Japan thinks foreigners sound like in Godzilla versus Biollante. So like when the security team is in a gunfight with the bio major terrorists, they sneak attack and one of the guys shouts, "Hey guys, look here!" And then the foreign terrorists just shoot the Japanese security guards. It's just such a ridiculous thing. Like we wouldn't say it. Like I think the most badass thing he probably could have said was like just jump out and go peekaboo and then just start shooting or something like that. But he's like, "Hey guys, look here."
Oh, I did really enjoy the 3-tiered Godzilla warning system. And like tier 3 is Godzilla is awake and active. And I think, do you really need the tier 3?
Oh yeah, I was gonna bring that up myself. Like, do they use that in other movies? Like, I wasn't sure about that, or if this was just an invention for this particular movie. So they made that like a big part of it. Like that, whenever you got to like a different phase of what Godzilla was doing, like they had that different alert for it.
Different alert.
Yeah, we'd probably have to watch the ones that come right after it, don't you think?
Yeah, I'd have to rewatch a bunch of them to see if they do that. But it kind of mirrors. Japan has an alert system for SMS that tells you when like tsunamis are coming or earthquakes. And so when I saw that, it kind of just reminded me of that. So there's another point, like getting back to the quotes, there's another point where people are fleeing during the lab explosion and a gaijin woman just yells, "Hysteria!" like everyone just says that in a time of crisis. Or like, I don't know, maybe they thought like in times of crisis, we just yell out our favorite Def Leppard album.
Chaos.
We narrate what's going on.
Yes. More gaijin dialogue. So
which also came out around that same time too.
Yes,
Hysteria. There we go. All links in.
Hidden Easter egg. for a Def Leppard. So Manjot Bioy's SSS9, which is really rolls right off the tongue there. The Seradian agent, his character tracks down the rival corporate bio major goons, and at the start of their gunfight, one of them yells, "Damn, we are a lethal weapon!" And when they're getting shot at, the other guy just says, "Trouble!"
Yeah, it is so bad.
Ain't that the truth?
See, I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure if that was if that was like tongue in cheek enough to be a Lethal Weapon reference, or if it's just like whatever the Japanese version of a weeb is for America.
Yeah, that's what I figured too. I figured like maybe they were like somebody on the production team was obsessed with that movie and was like, "Hey, make him say that."
Yeah, it was out for 2 years.
We are a lethal weapon. Too old for this shit.
So yeah, at one point talk about a guy who wants to start a biobank full of Nobel Prize winners' semen, quote, to use for future reproduction of geniuses.
Yeah, that I noticed that one too. That was not on my Godzilla movie bingo card for sure.
I feel like that's
wow,
an
that would have been a
unrealized
bad
spin-off.
idea. That would have been a really bad idea.
Now you see why that one scientist was so against that idea and all the other genetic stuff they were doing.
Yeah, just like we really are the monsters.
Yeah.
So there's a Godzilla Memorial Lounge featuring a building with a giant footprint in the ceiling where they put a
I
window
love that.
to cover it. Yeah, indicating that Godzilla stepped on the building in a previous attack, most likely in Godzilla 1984.
That's a good detail.
Manjot Bioy's character shoots the truck once and it falls over sideways down a hill like it was a person getting shot.
It's like the Joker shooting the Batwing in Batman 89.
Yeah, and it just falls down.
Yeah.
But like there wasn't even an explosion or like a fire or anything. It was just like, "Oh, you got me," and it just like went down the hill.
Yeah, I figured it was like he shot the tire out and then he slipped over. But yeah, it did look like that. It was hilarious.
Yeah.
My interpretation was the driver died, right? Because he dies from that.
Yep.
And so like he flipped it in his death throes.
Oh, you know what? They do have a scene where they show him dead, kind of hanging upside down with a bullet in his head. So that's probably what it was. But they didn't show
shot
the contact.
Neck or something.
Yeah,
you don't see
through
him
the back of
get
the
shot.
truck.
What's that?
It would have had to go through the back of the truck because he was fleeing, right? Or was he shooting him?
No, he was driving at the assassin.
Oh, he was driving toward him. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. All right. That makes sense. Okay. And then, so I did notice that the cinematography is noticeably improved in the filming techniques in this movie. So there was a lot more close shots of Biollante's vine attacks on Godzilla's body to add realism to what would have looked more fake from a distance. And when the teenage Esper is communicating face to face with Godzilla, there's a dolly zoom where they pull the camera back while adjusting the focus. It's something Hitchcock used in Vertigo, Scorsese used it in Goodfellas, and Spielberg used it in Jaws. And it kind of gives the viewers this feeling of uneasiness, like the world is closing in on the focused character. So I thought that was interesting. You got all these fancy film techniques and complimentary music with a script full of clownish gaijin bozos and international corporate buffoonery.
As silly as it is well made. So
All right, Pendy, what about your favorite moments?
For me, that lethal weapon line got me too. I mean, there's some other stuff in there. There's like this line where the Seradian terrorist, I think he says, it's the beginning where he shoots up all the Americans in the beginning of the movie. And he says when he's about to leave, he says, "K, see you guys." But it sounds kiss you guys.
Kiss you guys, yeah. That's right.
I'm giving the movie the benefit of the doubt that he's like saying, "K, see you guys." But yeah, it sounds very suspicious. Suspiciously like kiss you guys. Like I was like confused there.
Like you just got shot. The last thing you hear is just the killer going, "Kisses."
But that same character and that actor, he also gets I also give him some overacting praise for when he sees Godzilla like outside of the building that he's in, and he's like, "Damn, it's Godzilla." And
then he walks away casually.
Yeah.
That's right.
I was like,
oh
God, so awful.
So great.
Something that I liked was the Super X2 with the reflecting diamond mirror. I thought that was a very cool concept. Though in the movie, it made no sense to me the first time that it attacks Godzilla, why they still had it attacking Godzilla after the mirror was taken out, because it was basically useless at that point. And I don't know why they didn't recall it back at that point, because it's like shot some missiles, which of course is not going to do crap to to it, and of course it gets damaged again.
Yeah.
But at least when it's used later, it does serve a purpose to lure Godzilla into their trap. So that made sense. But the first time where it kept fighting, I was like, why just bring it back so you can try and maybe fix the mirror or something. I thought that was
I
silly.
think they said that it was beyond repair.
Well,
That
once they
said
brought it back, yeah, but they didn't realize that at the time. Yeah,
Gotcha.
once they tried to once they had it back and they tried to repair it, they're like, oh, sorry, but oh well.
So the Super X2, when it was introduced, it was sort of unintentionally funny for me, and I don't know if it's like a combination of how they were describing the Super X2 and the music, because it seemed like they were building it up like so high, only for it to fly out and Godzilla to just smack it down in one strike. But but I started laughing at the part where they were saying, oh yeah, it's also submersible. I'm thinking like, yes, it's large and metal and heavy. I imagine it's very submersible. It's just going to go straight down, and it's going to stay there, and it's going to stay there as long as you need it to stay there.
And it was interesting because it's kind of gives you a preview of what like drone warfare would become, because basically it's a drone. But I mean, that's what we do these days with the same kind of concept. Just we usually don't have ones that can go underwater too.
Well,
there was a guy at the concert arena last night that pissed off Post Malone because he had a drone and it was just flying it around.
Jeez.
But yeah, I thought it was kind of funny because they said, oh yeah, the mirror got hot. Well, what did you expect the mirror to do? That's its function. You don't have a backup to put it on there if it gets broken or something. That's kind of what you need, guys.
They describe it as impenetrable, and then they're like, oh, it melted.
Yeah, that's how powerful Godzilla is. They're trying to like demonstrate that.
The heat-proof mirror.
That's the military-industrial complex at work.
Yeah.
Lowest bidder. That's what happens. Lowest bidder. But something else I thought that was hilarious is that they kept mentioning the prime minister was too busy for Godzilla. I was kind of wondering, like, is this some kind of like snarky political commentary? Because they'd be like,
sure.
What does the prime minister think about this? Godzilla's coming. He's like, oh, he's too busy like battling his political foes and whatnot.
Yeah, if you've seen Shin Godzilla, that's one of the underlying themes of it is the Japanese bureaucracy and how like they could have solved that problem at the beginning, but everybody had to have meetings and fill out forms and all that, and it's just blow the damn thing up. Come on.
Yeah,
that's funny.
They had to gather the think tank.
Yep.
Oh, another thing I thought was hilarious was, if you remember that devil guy that was on TV, and he's like, "Come to me, my followers. You must blah blah blah."
Yeah.
And then he gets interrupted by the news where they give him a little notification. He's like, "Oh, sorry. Yeah, here's the news.
Yeah.
We gotta break off. Sorry."
Yeah. I thought that must have been some kind of Japanese pop culture reference that we just didn't get.
I think so.
It is. I recognize it from somewhere. I just can't quite put my finger on it.
And you could tell that it was like an intentional joke. It wasn't one of those scenes where like it was unintentionally funny. It was like something that they were definitely going for a joke there, and I appreciated that. Something else that I thought was fun was that whenever you see like the big G on a map that represents Godzilla, all I could think of was like, oh, G-spot, or that famous song, "Ain't Nothing But a G Thing, Baby." Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg. And then
did you also notice Obama on the map?
No.
What?
Yeah, the map, the map where it's showing Godzilla in the water and like all the different cities and stuff. There's one that says Obama. It's right in the middle. So like next time you see it, keep an eye out.
Oh, they predicted the future election. That's nice.
They did.
Godzilla getting political.
Another thing I liked was when Godzilla, you think he's defeated. He's kind of lying half out of the water, half in the water, and then he gets back up. And then basically the end of the movie is like, you know what? I'm Godzilla. This was difficult. Screw this. I'm out. And he just leaves.
Yeah.
He just like wakes up from a hangover and he's just like, I've had it with your crap. See ya.
Yeah. That was hilarious. So
EastX, what were your favorite moments from the movie?
Okay, well, this was my first time watching the movie, although I've owned the out of print Blu-ray for several years. So I wish I had noticed more things, because I think some of you guys are coming at it from multiple views perhaps. But there was an army guy in a skyscraper who shoots a rocket into Godzilla's mouth. Like there were maybe 4 bazooka guys and they split up and they all fire at Godzilla. And this guy, he just shoots it straight into his mouth, which is really cool. But then, it doesn't seem to do very much. And then Godzilla kills him. And like the army guys who are, I don't know, listening remotely or watching remotely, they're sad about it. So I was sad for the guy, but at least he got a cool shot in.
Oh, and he got a cool line too, because he was like, you need to take your medicine orally, Godzilla, because it'll be more effective or something like that.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. So that makes it even better. I mean, it was a cool moment. I think it would be better if you let the guy live after giving him a cool moment like that, but those are the breaks.
It was sort of the film's dead Ewok moment.
I guess so. So they just had to be a little bit mean there. You know, you've got some scenes with Godzilla in the water that look really good. I think they used a different suit for him in the water, is what I was reading in the wiki.
Yeah.
But good looking stuff there, and just the kaiju fights. Like, for me, this movie starts out very, very slow and eventually gets going. And like, some of the things that I find slow and hard to hold my attention are things that you guys are finding funny, but they're not even supposed to be funny. So it's not like, I don't think that works in the movie's favor. But yeah, like, once Godzilla is fighting Super X2, that's fun. And when he's fighting Biollante, which I think is just twice, but those fights are really cool. So that was good stuff.
I mean, it's meant to be a fun popcorn movie. So I think that's why I'm seeing as some of this stuff is more funny, because it's not like -1, where it is very grim and it's very serious. Although you can laugh at the fact that Godzilla is just focusing on this one dude and is doing everything he can just to ruin his life at every single moment, just out of spite.
I mean, you can tell that this movie doesn't take itself so seriously when it gets to that one scene where the guy has the yellow construction hat and they bop him on the head and it has the big boing.
Yep.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Bong.
So, I mean, I'm not going to say it's a kids movie, but it's very much kind of like an all ages popcorn film. I would say like more like the all-time classic, The Mummy, starring Brendan Fraser.
Oh, that's a good comparison.
Yeah, that is a good comparison.
So, did you have a favorite character from the movie? EastX, let's start with you.
Yay. Well, yeah, my favorite character. Okay, firstly, this movie, characters are a weak point for this movie, I would say. Like, there's not a lot of characterization, so you're kind of just relying on what few actions the characters do and just like how cool the actor looks or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But they do introduce a character, the psychic girl, Miki Sayagusa. She's played by an actress named Megumi Odaka. And, well, I mean, she's cool because she's psychic, and they fly her around, and she has a psychic interaction with Godzilla at one point. I guess apparently convincing him to turn around briefly was the point of that. But I mean, like, you know, she's a pretty girl, she's psychic, which makes her interesting. And as it turns out, she's the most frequently recurring human character in Godzilla films, because she appeared in a total of 6 films, starting with this one. And I thought that was really cool. So I'd like to go back and pay attention to those movies eventually and notice her in them.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind continuing the watch or continuing the rewatch and just continue the remaining movies. We should do a side Godzilla podcast where we just watch every single one of them as if we
I'd
had
be
time,
all about it.
As if I had time for that. I would love to. But all right, Dwayne, how about you?
I said earlier, I love the secret agent, and I love the quote unquote Americans. But no, I thought one of the things that I thought was nice, that it had a pretty diverse cast, and I thought all the characters got just enough time to shine. Just like even some of the minor characters, I think nobody really blends into the background or is forgettable in any way. So that was nice.
Yeah. How about you, Pendy?
Just as a little side note before we go on, for EastX, I have watched this twice, but that's only because we've been trying to do this episode for so long. Like, we did this, we started this back in June, and we had to reschedule like a whole bunch of times. So I had to watch it again just to be like, oh, I can't remember anything from the first time I watched it.
So like really quick, you mentioned you watched this on Max.
Yeah. If I was going to mention this later in the podcast, but if you want to watch this without having to resort to like illegal downloading or anything like that, they do actually have it on Max.
Okay. Was it added recently? Because I know this movie was always a part of a lot of kaiju film festivals, because like the Blu-ray was out of print and it was kind of hard to find, and I'm not sure if it's because Sugiyama, as the kids say, likes to get that bag or what. So I don't know.
So Paul, you said you have the Blu-ray, right? Are there any special features on it that would make it worthy of tracking down?
Yes, there are 2 making of featurettes, and I greatly wish I had time to watch them, but I did not get to, man.
All right, that's cool that they exist, though. It's interesting. I wonder if
I wonder how much that Blu-ray is on the market if you try and find it. Interesting to see that.
Let's find out. Let's go to the electronic auction bay.
Well, let's also hope that it gets re-released in an HD 2D format.
Put it in 4K, dang it.
Yes.
I'd buy it again.
So, Pendy.
Sweet, merciful crap.
Oh no, what?
Blu-ray of this one auction, $300.93. But I'm also seeing DVDs from like $25 and $40.
Oh,
so
okay.
EastX, please tell me you didn't spend that much.
You've got
no,
options.
I paid maybe 20 for it originally. You know, like I bought it on the tail end of
Okay.
its availability, but before it was all the way hard to
Price
find.
gouged. Yeah.
Okay, the $300 one is sealed. The like $25 and $40 ones are pre-owned. So
Awesome.
there you go.
So Pendy, did you have a favorite character from the movie?
I mean, Godzilla, I guess. I mean, I wasn't like a huge fan of most of the characters in this movie, but I did like the human character that was in charge of all the military moves. I thought he was all right. I think some people might be thrown back by him kind of ordering around all of those generals, since I'm sure he's younger and a lower rank, but he probably had operational authority based on the orders he was given. That actually does happen sometimes in the military. Even my old job, because I used to be in the military, retired recently, had like positional authority for certain jobs, where in my job I could tell people with a higher rank than mine to do certain things based off of regulations that back me up. So that actually was pretty realistic, and I liked his character and how he was kind of just trying to weaving in and out of the different catastrophes that he was handed when it came to Biollante and Godzilla. But yeah, I would say the rest of the characters, for me anyways, were just kind of okay at best.
Okay, so
he was pretty good, that guy.
Yeah, so that was the guy who was like in charge of the X2.
Yeah, the X2, and he was in charge of like ordering where the army should go and the ships and all that stuff. Like he had like complete operational authority.
Was he an established character from a previous film? I wonder were they alluding to him having experience with kaiju or Godzilla in the past?
I don't know, because I hadn't seen the previous film, so he came in with it seemed like he was just in charge of the X2, but then you realize he's in charge of like pretty much everything. So I don't know if he was in charge of the X2 project from the first movie, because I do know that the X2 first shows up in the movie before this, and this one is like an improved version of it.
Yeah, and if you want help falling asleep, then watch Godzilla 1984, because it's an excellent sedative.
Nice.
That was one of the ones I think I watched the most as a kid, because it was always on in the late 80s or the mid to late 80s. They redubbed it as Godzilla 1985 and put Raymond Burr in it.
And that version is a little bit shorter and quicker, so to me it's a little bit more rewatchable, but they're different.
Yeah, I actually don't have that version. I was only able to find 1984 on DVD, so I'm still kind of looking for that one.
I did notice there was a lot of Godzilla movies, Japanese Godzilla movies on Max. So if you have Max, you can watch a bunch of them.
I do not, but I do have Plex, so
there you go.
My favorite characters, Manjot Bioi's assassin in the business suit and the mullet and sunglasses is hilariously over the top, but I still agree with EastX that the ESP girl, Miki Sayagusa, is the most interesting. It's the first time is it the first time that ESP was introduced as real in the Godzilla franchise? I don't really remember that.
No, because they had like psychic characters going all the way back to the 60s when it was like super campy.
Yeah, and they had like space aliens coming in and all that. Yeah. So not only can she talk to plants and sense Godzilla and Biollante's movements, but she uses her powers to persuade Godzilla to go in another direction, like she's a Jedi or one of the X-Men. We talked about her becoming a recurring character in the sequels. I thought it was interesting as well that in addition to Godzilla and plant cells, they factored in the cells of the dead scientist into creating Biollante and somehow pulled in part of Erica's soul into the monster.
Oh yeah, that made a big part of that monster, especially like when he kind of disappears into the ether and you see her image as he's going, or she's going away.
Yeah, it's just like, I have to go now, and it's like Erica died on her way back to her home planet.
And I did read that Biollante does show up in other properties, mostly like video games and books and stuff like that, but there is another Godzilla movie after this. I think it's Godzilla in Space or something like that, where I guess Biollante is in that as well. At least she is credited as appearing in that movie.
I thought it looked a lot like the
Space
Metroid
Godzilla?
Queen.
Yeah, Space Godzilla. That's it.
I don't remember that, but I know that what they'll do is they'll have a battle royale movie. They had like one or two of those, like all out monsters attack or something, where they'll just have everybody come in and just fight each other.
Yeah, didn't they have one where they brought in like the 90s American Godzilla as a joke as one of the monsters?
Yeah, they just rebranded it Zilla.
Yeah, and that's Godzilla Final Wars.
There you go.
Yeah.
So any other thoughts on the movie? Liam, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I guess the one thing that I was thinking about as I watched various Godzilla movies is like, don't we have a contract since World War II that America's supposed to be Japan's army? So like, why is it whenever Godzilla attacks Japan, we have this like, you guys deal with it policy? Like, that's really more of the Japan Self-Defense Force's job.
I mean, like, wouldn't you? It's just like,
you guys handle this.
That's a them problem.
Some of the movies
the
explain
military.
that. Yeah, I think it's Godzilla -1 explains that the U.S. like can't come to their help for some reason. Like sometimes they actually at least tell you why.
That's true. In -1, they do actually bother to explain it. In this movie, they're they don't, and they're just kind of on their
Yeah.
own, and like have fun with our company that's going to try and steal all your secrets.
Yeah, so many of it is like Japan is on their own, and in this case, America's involvement is just as corporate espionage, terrorists.
But EastX, what else do you have on the movie that you'd like to talk about?
Well, okay. Firstly, I really hate all of the English speaking characters. Like, so yeah, they're not funny to me. I just find it insulting. I mean, because I'm a pedantic person, you know, like I'm an English teacher. I correct people's spelling errors online and things like that, right? To have these people just absurdly mangle our language, like, oh my gosh. And one of you guys had suggested, like, well, these actors speak English and they don't correct the dialogue or point out that the dialogue is bad. You know, it's a combination of bad dialogue and the people just like pooping out the worst pronunciation of every line and everything. Oh my God, they're just so bad. Like, people who aren't actors shouldn't be given speaking roles. That's what I think.
I think for the characters where it's established that like English is not their native language, like the Japanese characters that speak English or the Seradian characters that speak English, that's fine, though it is painful. Like that one scene near the beginning where like the Japanese guy is speaking the Seradian guy, and it's kind of hard to tell what the heck they're saying to each other. But like when the people who are actually established from America are doing that stuff, that's when it's like, oh my God, what are we doing here?
Right.
Yeah, and I mean, if they're going to have that stuff and they won't bother to find anyone who actually speaks English to help them, which is like cannot have been impossible even in the late 1980s. Like, if they won't do that, then just minimize the dialogue. Like, don't give us so much of that, because it's a lot, you know. So that's my pet peeve.
Yeah, I think it's much easier now to easily look up like how to properly pronounce something, and also the way the Japanese language is structured in katakana and all that. You know, you're gonna get the English stuff because they always add the vowel after the consonant. And I've known there are people who live here in Houston, and they have lived here for 30 plus years, but with their accent, they still speak English, you know, kind of like that. So it might not always be intentional. They're probably just doing their best given their accent and what they've had time to study. And also, this isn't like a serious dramatic movie either, where they would probably spend a little bit more time on that. This is just something it's just for fun.
And plus, it's in the late 80s, and they probably don't really care about like the international audience at this point for Godzilla movies. So they're like,
right.
we're whatever. If it's not perfect, then who's really going to notice?
Dex, we both live in the Houston area. I'm sure we have both heard our fair share of Peggy Hill Spanish.
That's based in realism?
Yes.
That's
wow.
Well, you know, I don't know, like, but in a movie, do you hear someone mangling Spanish that bad? Like, I don't know that I have. Like, yes, you might hear, you know, like, for instance, my wife, you know, her Spanish is much worse than mine, and mine's not even very good. But you wouldn't put her in a movie as a Spanish speaking character, but it just takes me out of the movie a little bit. You know, like, I like to buy into the universe of the movie. I like to suspend my disbelief, and so actors doing a bad job takes me out of it a little. But
I had a friend that was a nurse, and you could not take her to a movie that had anything remotely of like a hospital scene or someone was injured, because she would absolutely lose her mind at the inaccuracies. Just like yell at the screen. It's like, he should be doing this. Just like, that is completely wrong. This is bullshit. And I'm like, stop it. We're gonna get kicked out. We're being those people in the theater. Stop it.
And like, it still happens in American films these days. You think it wouldn't with like the budgets that we have, but like in the Marvel movies, like in Black Panther, I saw that in Korea, and there's a scene where they are in, I think, Busan in Korea, and there's this old woman that they talk to who's speaking Korean, and the people in the theater were just laughing their ass off because it was they really garbled the Korean, and it wasn't that good. And like, I remember seeing comments online saying like, what accent is this? I don't even understand what she's saying. annoying.
See,
So-
people shouldn't do that.
No, they shouldn't. Like, come on. It's not that hard, especially these days, to find people that can speak the language well and throw them in a movie or something like that. So I get where you're coming from, EastX, especially coming from the American characters. It's like, why?
Yeah, it makes it campy. You know, it would be a much more serious film if they cut a lot of that stuff out, or like you said before, cut the dialogue shorter.
Yeah.
You know.
EastX, did you have anything else that you wanted to add about the movie?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, and again, I've only seen the movie once, so I wish I had more deep insights. But the film is also, it just starts out slowly, and it's not just that I don't like the English speaking parts. Like, this film could be cut down by 10 to 15 minutes, and you'd have a great pace if they did so. But Godzilla 1984 is famously a very long, slow movie, and this is the sequel to that. In Godzilla 1985, they fixed it up a little by cutting some of it out and sticking in some American parts, whether or not that makes for a good movie. But this one, I believe even the dub version is just uncut, so they're not fixing the pacing any. I wish they would have done that, but eventually Godzilla movies get a much brisker pace, and I think that benefits them.
Yeah, it does have a lot of exposition at the beginning.
Oh yeah. Oh, and it's an example of stuff you could cut. Like the detail they go into about the 4 level of Godzilla alerts. That's stuff that would be right at home in a novelization of a movie, but like you don't have to give us so much of that in the actual film. Like it's just slowing the film down.
Right. No, agreed. Dwayne, what notes do you have about the movie as well?
I can think of it. It's just, I don't know. It's one of those movies. There are lots of different Godzilla films, and I think this one is a little mix of everything, because you've got your campiness of the 60s stuff, and then you've got your like semi-serious of the later ones. So I think it tries to please everyone. It is, and given the time it came out, it's a good middle of the road Godzilla movie to watch.
And then
Speaking of English teacher, I see you, Paul, in there italicizing all the movie names in the note.
that's his thing. But the first time I watched this movie was a copy of it that Liam shared with me. And when I was first watching it, I thought, oh crap, is this the English dub? But then I realized that it was an international reporter basically doing a stand-in for CNN, which they called CCN. And I was worried because I thought, oh no, I hate dubs for live action. You get the Godzilla effect made famous by this franchise's dubs. It's just too hard to get the English to match up with the mouth flaps in live action with anything that's not animated, and it just bothers me too much. Also, the plant doctor doesn't keep his classified documents locked up, and as a retired military guy that used to work with documents like that, it made me cringe pretty hard. And he gets to keep the documents at his private lab. Like, who does he think he is? Biden? Trump?
I was about to say, it's just like, yeah, that's no different than the people who work at our highest levels of government. So
yeah, unfortunately.
But one of the things I forgot about that I appreciated, something that a lot of people try and kind of block out, that was a part of the 80s, were the giant shoulder pads in women's clothing, and the one news anchor, she had the giant like linebacker gear on. I was like, yes, that is the late 80s.
That's funny. I also thought it was funny that they misspelled Seradia on the yellow helmet that I mentioned before when he gets bonked. And as Stelladia, they mixed the R and the L up, which is common.
This is common, yeah.
But I noticed that little detail. But looking up the origins of the name of Seradia was pretty fun. Like, many people assume it's like a take on combining the words in Saudi Arabia, but I also saw that other people think that it might be them combining the words Sahara and arid together. So that might be it as well. And then, did anyone catch the electronic sketch pad the girl was using as a My First Sony? Mm-hmm. So that had a whole line of products for kids, including a Walkman, a microphone, a recording tape deck, a boombox, alarm clock, and the electronic sketch pad that was shown, and some headset walkie-talkies. They actually, if you grew up in the 80s like I did, they actually had a famous commercial, which I'll put a link for in our show notes for the YouTube video of it. And the song goes like, I'd like a bike, I'd like a pony, what I love is My First Sony.
Oh, I do remember that.
Yeah.
Huh.
So if you
there was also another piece of Wayne's World level product placement with the Seiko sports watch.
Oh yeah. And then, did you notice, speaking of those, did you notice the big Mitsubishi sign that was on the billboard as Godzilla's like wrecking Osaka? Mm-hmm. That was in there too. Another thing that was actually disturbing for me was the amount of teeth that Biollante has. I feel like the artist behind the design kept going up to the director with sample drawings, and the director kept saying, more more teeth. It needs more teeth. Like if you look inside the mouth of
equals
Biollante.
scary.
Yeah, so many teeth. And then finally, I think the moral of this story in this movie is, hey, don't trust American companies, kids. They will let loose Godzilla in your country.
So that's a
Just out of
good
spite.
lesson to learn.
Can't have that.
Oh, so next we are going to go into some interesting things of note. This movie is a sequel to the Godzilla reboot, Godzilla 1984, as we mentioned before, aka The Return of Godzilla, which itself was meant to be a direct sequel to the original 1954 Godzilla. This makes Godzilla vs. Biollante the third movie in the reboot series, which continues to focus on straying away from the floppy rubber suit Godzilla of the Showa era for a less hokey, more serious interpretation, at least somewhat anyways.
So Godzilla vs. Biollante is the second film in the Heisei era of Godzilla franchise, which spans from 1984 to 1995.
In the fall of 1985, Toho held a contest to decide the plot for the next Godzilla movie, inviting writers and fans to submit story treatments for the project. Out of 5,024 submissions and with 10 finalists, the winner was Shinichiro Kobayashi, a dentist and part-time screenwriter.
That explains all the teeth.
Yeah.
So we have a dentist to thank for all that
Oh, God.
English dialogue.
I didn't even think about that. That's hilarious.
So the Super X-2 anti-Godzilla defense spaceship in the movie was version 2, as we mentioned, of the destroyed Super X featured in Godzilla 1984. It was built using the salvage remains of the Super X aircraft. The new and improved model is operated fully remotely this time and acts as both an airship and a submersible. Now, they were learning from the previous version, which had pilots inside it. So in this case, they operated it remotely like a drone, like we said.
But screw you
So
if you're a helicopter pilot.
Yeah.
Oh.
These types of crafts are almost always serve as a distraction for Godzilla, who eventually overpowers and destroys them, even if it gives the humans or Godzilla's kaiju opponents enough time to regroup on a strategy and gain an upper hand.
Godzilla vs. Biollante was released theatrically in Japan on December 16th, 1989. It received generally positive reviews, who praised the storyline, visual effects, and Sugiyama's score, but was a disappointment at the Japanese box office due to the competition with Back to the Future Part 2. Again, damn those Americans.
USA, USA,
Oh.
USA.
That is so funny. I actually didn't know that before we recorded this. But so there's a moment in the film where the setting Kansai International Airport construction site is used, and Kansai is a famous airport in Osaka. So I looked up its construction date, and it officially actually opened in 1994, which would have been 5 years after the movie release, making the construction inclusion in the movie a moment in Japanese history.
Oh, so that's why it took so long, because of Godzilla. Delayed the opening.
It was the most technological advanced city that was just wiped out in moments by Godzilla. Like like every time he wakes up, just all the engineers and the construction people are like, God damn it,
Not again.
not this shit again.
But Kansai is actually where I flew in for when we did Dragon Quest Island, because that was the nearest airport, I guess, to where we could meet up Pendy and then go down to Awaji.
I've been in that airport a couple of times now. It has a really nice, I don't know if Nintendo has like a stake in the airport, but like as you're entering the airport, it has this really nice mural for a lot of Nintendo characters and stuff like that. I don't know if you remember that part of it.
I don't. Actually. That's cool.
Next, we'll go into kind of the Godzilla franchise as a whole in general. So we're going to go into like our favorite Godzilla moments among the movies that we've seen throughout the franchise. So I'll go first. So full disclosure for me, I'm not a huge Godzilla fan normally, at least not the traditional ones. Like the idea of a guy in a rubber suit battling model vehicles and other guys in rubber suits never appealed to me at all. It's also probably why I never got into Power Rangers or like the Super Sentai type shows. But I really, really loved Godzilla -1. I mean, what a great movie. It has modern effects. It looked amazing. And most importantly, the human characters actually had a story I was invested in and cared about. Like the main character's path to redemption after his initial cowardice was really well done. All the other characters were great too. I highly recommend anyone go see that movie, whether they're a Godzilla fan or not. I also like the newer American Godzilla movies from the MonsterVerse, though usually the less screen time the human characters have, the better, which they actually did a good job of with minimizing them in the last one, Godzilla vs. Kong, The New Empire. Like that three-way fight they had at the end of the movie was amazing. And in the first Godzilla vs. Kong movie, I also really loved the use of Mechagodzilla. That was fun too. I would also like to see the Apple TV TV show Monarch: The Legacy of Monsters, because I've heard a lot of good things about it, but I don't really need another streaming service right now. It's too bad. It's too bad because I hear it's a pretty good one, and it also stars Anna Sawai, who is Mariko in Shota, which she recently won an Emmy for. So maybe eventually I'll watch that, but for now, that's not going to be my thing to get another streaming service just to see that.
Yeah, Apple TV always has that one thing.
Yeah.
Where, like, I would like to see that, but I don't want to pay for it. But the Argyle was going to be on an Apple TV exclusive. It was originally made for that, but they released it in the theater. So maybe they'll put it on, release a DVD set or something like that. I don't know. Argyle is actually a really cute movie. I recommend that. It's great.
Yeah, there's a couple of things I'd like to see in Apple TV, like the Tetris movie or like the new Snoopy show, but I don't want to spend the money right now.
Time Bandits.
Oh,
that's what I would watch if I had it.
So Liam, what are your favorite movies across the franchise?
Well, my favorite franchise moments are just like seeing it transition from serious black and white horror film, which is the first one, to like a guy in a floppy rubber suit to a CGI monster over the course of like 60 plus years. Like in other words, it's just seeing it go from like serious to hokey and then back to serious. And it's just interesting to see that kind of transition and longevity. Ridiculous comedic moments when they're not taking themselves too seriously, like Godzilla dancing, the infamous dropkick tail slide from Godzilla versus Ibara, from Godzilla versus Ibara, the sea monster, which is essentially Godzilla fighting a giant lobster. And at one point they're like playing tennis with boulders. And there's even a cringeworthy scene from the original King Kong versus Godzilla where they show up on Kong's island to capture Kong, and the Skull Island natives are all Japanese people in blackface. And the Japanese characters try to bribe the natives with cigarettes, and they even give them to a child. So for that dubbing in that movie, they mispronounce Hokkaido throughout the entire film, calling it Hokkaido. And because it's Japanese people dubbing, they just like, it makes it hilariously look like Japan doesn't know how to pronounce their own prefixes. In Giant Monsters All Out Attack, which is, again, I love these ones where it's just a battle royal and you get to see so many of them all grouped together at once in one movie. There's a hospital scene where a woman who had survived a previous Godzilla attack lying in the hospital when Godzilla walks nearby, and he makes eye contact with her through the window, but then he moves on to the woman's relief, and then seconds later his tail just swings in and destroys the hospital. And it's this hilariously asshole move on Godzilla's part with dramatic irony sealing the woman's fate.
Oh, that poor woman. What about you, Dwayne?
So I admit I am a filthy casual when it comes to Godzilla. I saw the original, and I've seen the older ones from the 60s, the campy ones, just in passing, and I've enjoyed them. Just like you get when you watch a rubber monster movie, you pretty much know what you're gonna get, and as long as it serves that, I'm fine. I did like the reboot, the Monarch, came out 2015, that one, but and I thought that one did a great job of teasing you, because like just when you thought it was gonna show the fight, it would cut away or the doors would close or something like that. It's frustrating as an audience member, but as a filmmaker and an editor, I appreciate the technique. I saw the one after that, enjoyed it. I have not seen the Godzilla versus Kong movies, and that's partly because I'm very much a social moviegoer. If my friends are going, I'll go too. And so I think those movies are reaching a stage where it's kind of hitting the ceiling of how much it can do before it gets completely ridiculous and they lose the plot. But I'll see them sometime soon. I really enjoyed -1, and I saw the black and white version. So I still haven't seen it in color. I'd like to check that out someday. But I really enjoyed all the Godzilla -1 memes. Highly recommend checking those out, especially the one where the main character, he's just like talking about his issues, and like Godzilla pops up in the background. He's like, "Stop fucking crying, bitch! Wah wah wah! I don't want to hear it." And there's also one with like I think it's from Fortnite, and it's just like an anime girl running around, and Godzilla is in the background and just grabs a bus and throws it at her. But I would like to check out the Godzilla versus Kong movies, because I heard Kong, Kong wins in the whole Godzilla versus Kong. I am on the monkey side of that argument. So,
well, you are a big supporter of Harambe. I do remember that.
Yeah, I'm gonna be a third time Harambe voter.
EastX, what about you?
Well, I'm a pretty big fan. It's sort of like my fandom of Dragon Quest, where I've experienced, maybe 2/3 of them, but not all of them. And I know a lot about certain ones, but not so much about others. But a few experiences I'd like to talk about. Oh, there was the first American Godzilla movie, which is Godzilla in 1998 from Sony, and a famously bad movie, or at least a bad Godzilla movie. And I took my young son to that movie, so this lets you know that I'm like 100 years old. But he was a baby, and I took him to see the movie, and he fell asleep during it. So I think that represents how good that movie is, because yeah, it's a terrible Godzilla movie, and nowadays a lot of Godzilla fans call that particular monster Geno, Godzilla in name only, because it's just obviously not Godzilla. It's a big weenie dinosaur that's like so much less powerful and cool compared to real Godzilla, right?
Didn't they rebrand it as Zilla?
Yeah, exactly. When they brought it back for Godzilla Final Wars, they call it Zilla, and actual Godzilla just destroys it right away, which is really funny. But it captures how most Godzilla fans feel about that monster. So.
It had its moments, but it was also made by the Independence Day guys, and I was never a fan of those guys anyway. So
yeah, they're not great.
There's a mural near me where I live, and it's got the shadow of Godzilla, and I swear it's like the other shadow that it's like facing is the Zilla monster. I'll take a picture of that, and then we can put that in the YouTube version.
Oh yes, please. I'd love to see that.
Yeah, I always thought that was interesting. Every time we drive by it, I'm like, oh, that's interesting fact that they would actually put that in here.
That's fun. But I mean, like a lot of Godzilla fans, including me, feel like it would be a fine regular monster movie, but to call it Godzilla and have a monster that doesn't resemble or act like Godzilla, it was just a big mistake.
Yeah,
they shouldn't have done that. Then a few years later, Godzilla 2000 got brought to theaters, and that was the next Japanese movie after the American one, right? So it was something of a reaction to it in some ways. Godzilla fights a monster called Orga, I think. Anyway, so my son, he must have been like 2, because anyway, he was a little bit older, like 4 or 5, and I took him to Godzilla 2000, and he loved it. Like we had a thrilling time. And Godzilla 2000, it's not great, but it's pretty good. It's a lot better than Godzilla 1985 and American Godzilla. So that was cool. Those were some memorable Godzilla theatrical experiences, because those were the first 2 that I got to see in the theater. Anyway, of course, Penny mentioned Godzilla -1. That movie is not just a great Godzilla movie. It was my movie of the year last year. Like I see a lot of movies and I'm serious about them. And -1 is just a perfect, wonderful movie. And you got a color version, a black and white version. What a great film. And you care about the human characters, which a lot of the times they don't even try to get you to do. Like with Biollante, they don't really try to get you to care about them. Some of them are cool, but it's almost incidental that they're cool, because they just don't give very much actual characterization.
But one thing I really appreciated about the black and white version of -1 is they didn't just convert the file to grayscale. They actually went back through the movie and changed every single frame to balance it out, just to make sure that like not only was it just in black and white, but it also looked good and had the proper definition. That's I really appreciated that.
Nice. And I haven't actually gotten to watch it that way yet. I've just seen the color version a few times, but definitely it's on my list of things to watch. A couple more cool Godzilla movies that I'd just like to throw out there. Liam mentioned Giant Monsters All Out Attack. It's Godzilla, Mothra, King Ghidorah, Giant Monsters All Out. Yeah, I think that's the order of it. But anyway, that movie is really good. It's Godzilla is a bad guy in that movie, and he's just evil and mean, like what you mentioned. And you've got all the other monsters teaming up to fight him and try to stop him. And it's not just those 3 monsters in the title. There's also Anguirus and one other, Baragon or somebody like that. So you got a lot of cool monsters fighting, and Godzilla is threatening, and I think he's got red eyes. Like, it's the meanest, scariest version of Godzilla there is, in my opinion. So that movie's cool just for that. And finally, from 1960s Godzilla movies, the movies started to get silly and weird and such in the 60s, and Godzilla versus the Smog Monster comes from that era, and it's really stylish. Like, it's very colorful, and like, I guess hip is the word they would have used, but it's just cool and strange and creative. And so that makes it worth a watch if you're into that kind of stuff. Great series of movies.
Shin Godzilla really seems to be the one that everyone's kind of forgotten about.
I should watch that someday, right?
It's good. It's good. It's I didn't realize until afterwards that it was done by the Ava director, and like after that I was like, oh, okay, this makes a lot more sense.
Oh, Neon Genesis Evangelion director?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Oh, I didn't know that either.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I'm pretty sure. Please
No,
please
you're
correct
right.
me if I'm
It's
wrong.
from him.
No, it does make sense. I mean, it starts out with a very goofy version of Godzilla, and when I first saw it, I didn't even think it was. So I was like, all right, I can't wait.
Yeah,
Nice.
And then it didn't realize that it was like an evolving creature.
Get in the Godzilla, Shinji.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
like that is definitely a very scary version of Godzilla, and it's meant to be just this freak of nature, like complete monster. And at the very end, so like if you haven't seen it, I won't spoil it, but the final shot, I do like the final shot that had a lot of potential. I was like, ooh, I'd like to see where this goes, and then they did nothing.
Well, no, I mean, I think
true Ava
the
fashion.
point of that was to show you like what could have happened if they didn't stop it.
Yep.
And it's just a really haunting final scene. So it's definitely,
nice.
if you haven't seen Shin Godzilla, definitely check it out.
That's another one that I've had on Blu-ray for years and haven't gotten around to watching, but I will. But speaking of Shin Godzilla, the same guy then did Shin Ultraman and Shin Kamen Rider, right?
I did not know that. I'm not a big Sentai fan, so I did not.
Well, it is true. He wrote and directed them. What's his last name? I feel bad that I'm blanking on it. I usually know it. Anyway, Shin Ultraman is pretty good. It's like a real, fairly faithful homage to Ultraman, and it's very episodic. Like it's like six short stories stitched together into a movie for some reason. So it doesn't have a good flow or anything, but still pretty cool version of Ultraman. And then they did Shin Kamen Rider, and I really like Kamen Rider, and it's highly inspired by the original Kamen Rider, but not a good movie, I would say. Like the fight choreography, apparently they fired the choreographer or he quit midway through production. And so the fights are just terrible and the story's not any good. And we saw both of those in theaters. And like I got a friend to drive up to Houston with me to see him, and boy, he hated Shin Kamen Rider. I mean, but we all did, it was such a disappointment. So that was too bad.
Did you go to River Oaks for that?
I think it was, we went, I said Houston, but it's Sugarland. We went to a nice theater in Sugarland.
All right, awesome.
But the director that you're thinking of, EastX, Ano.
Yeah, Hideaki Anno, right?
Yes, exactly. Yep.
Yeah, an intellectual director, but I would not say that everything he touches is gold. Some of his stuff is good and some is not, in my opinion.
No, I agree.
Gunbuster, though, man, that's great anime.
Oh, that's good. That was before Evangelion, and that's a solid series.
It's very heart-wrenching, like much like Evangelion in that respect.
No, I agree.
Yeah. Ava and like Watchmen, I kind of hold in the same esteem the Watchmen comic series, is that I appreciate the history it made. I appreciate all that, but I do not like them at all. If I was invested in that series and if I got that ending, I would be rather upset.
Well, hey, they fixed it with the end of Evangelion, which is not messed up or screwed up whatsoever.
And didn't they remake it after that too? Are we on the third remake that he's just going to finish it when he feels like it?
No, he finished and he made like a series of movies, which some of them took like years and years and years to finally get finished. Long. But they have actually finished that series of movies, and you can watch them all on Amazon Prime. I recommend them. I thought it was cool, and it kind of ties in the whole universe of the show and even the video games and the movies, and it kind of puts them all together. So it's a fun way to kind of mash it all into one thing.
All right, so like it doesn't make you want to pull an Elvis and shoot the TV like Attack on Titan.
It honestly makes more sense than like the original show did, because the show, especially those last two episodes, was like, what is going on here?
Right.
Even the end of the Evangelion movie, there's some parts in it where like, you really went there, huh? Like that part of Shinji in the hospital.
People try and be artsy, but art is about communication, and if you can't communicate your point, then you failed as an artist.
I think that they were also notoriously rushed and got their budget cut.
Yeah, the last two episodes of the show. Yeah, so it's very, what's the word for it? Interpretive. It's almost like an interpretive dance. The last two episodes. It's very weird.
Not Philip Glass of anime.
It's avant-garde.
Yeah. Very much so. Very much.
All right. So interesting things of note: the Shobijin, the twin priestesses who watch over Mothra's eggs in the 1961 film and future Godzilla movies featuring Mothra, were the inspiration for the spiritual twin priestesses who watch over the Phoenix Ramia in Dragon Quest III and Valkyria and Dragon Quest VIII. This is something I looked up a few years ago thinking I was going to find some Japanese mythological connection, but there actually wasn't any, making it a direct cultural reference to the original Mothra film. Just a special thanks to Joel at snake_river_90 for reminding me of that point.
Nice. Bring in that Dragon Quest connection. I love it. Yeah, that's very cool because you can definitely tell from how that scene plays out in Dragon Quest 3 that it's like a callback to that scene or that movie.
The twin fairy priestesses like talking in unison.
Yeah.
And everything. It's just like directly a cultural reference.
Mm-hmm. So before we leave everyone today, we have a special game to play, which we have played here on this show before, called Marry, Thwack, Puff Puff. And so we decided for this episode, we're going to do a Godzilla-themed Marry, Thwack, Puff Puff.
Yep. So today we're having everyone choose between Godzilla, Biollante, and because we're all a bunch of gaijin here, King Kong.
Nice.
And so, Dwayne, we're going to put the spotlight on you first. So what do you think for these?
Well, I've given this a lot of thought, and I'm going to thwack Biollante just because I want to see Erica's image just fly up into the clouds again. But I'm gonna puff puff, and I'm gonna marry King Kong because I'm all about that sweet monkey love.
I think that's been in the rules, though. You got to pick one for one, right?
Hey, I can have my monkey and eat it too. It's fine.
Oh my god. Potentially the raunchiest thing everyone's ever said on Slime Time.
40.
Oh, I can go further if you want me to.
So moving on.
What are your choices?
I'll say something off air later that's about the movie that I don't think anyone else caught.
Okay. EastX, how about you?
Goodness, man. Well, I guess I
You gotta
would.
follow that.
Wow. No, I'll just knock it out real quick. Well, I would thwack Godzilla because Godzilla is often a bad guy. In fact, Godzilla was a bad guy in versus Biollante. There you go. And I would go for Puff Puff from Biollante because Biollante is technically a girl, so I'm sure she'd be good at that. And then I would marry King Kong because King Kong is very humanoid and could do a lot of household tasks and such, and I'm sure that'd be really nice.
I just, given the films, he's a very committed partner. He's never going to cheat on you.
That's
You have
true.
to have a really big
Very
house
true.
for him to do household tasks.
He'll climb a building for you and swat down airplanes. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I would say that I would want to do Puff Puff with King Kong because he's got that nice massive chest going on there. I would marry Biollante because Erica's pretty cute. And I mean, yeah, she's gone through some changes, but she's got a great personality, I think, maybe, sure. And then I would thwack
All those
Godzilla.
teeth, man.
All those teeth. But in thwack Godzilla because he's a bad guy, at least here it is in this movie.
Those are my exact pick too. I would Puff Kong because he's got the best move. I would marry Biollante because at least she's got the soul of a pretty lady, and Godzilla is just the bad guy, so I'd thwack him. So that's it for this episode of Slime Time. Thank you all for coming here to talk about Godzilla versus Biollante, and special thanks to our guests Dwaine and EastX.
Oh, thank you very much for having me. It's always fun to come on and chat with everybody.
Yes, and I'm glad to have been included as well. I love movies. I love Godzilla, so super fun to get to talk about that with you guys.
We're a non-profit podcast. We won't breath attack your hard-earned yen when we can offer you quality content for free. But if you do have some extra cash and you would like to donate anything to a website that's been supporting Dragon Quest fans for over 25 years, drop, kick, tail slide on over to the Dragon's Den by clicking the link in the show notes. There are several ways to support the Den, including the affiliate links that don't cost you anything extra when making other Dragon Quest purchases.
We even have a Slime Time t-shirt that was designed by our resident artist, me. See the link for it in the show notes. And if you want to see other Dragon Quest goodies, swing by my Instagram at DwaineArt at Instagram.com. And that's spelled Dwaine, cursed with a name nobody can spell.
For comments or questions, you can find us on Twitter and Instagram at DQ Slime Time.
We'd like to thank everyone that made this podcast possible, including Pendy, Liam, Woodus, the Dragon's Den, and Biollante. You were too beautiful for this world.
Especially those teeth. Join in tons of Dragon Quest discussion at the Dragon's Den forums or Discord and the Dragon Questers and Slime Time Facebook group.
Please like, subscribe, and write a review for the podcast.
Dragon Quest Slime Time, sliming.
Damn, we are a lethal weapon!
This is Gertrude for Slime Time, reminding you all that you must complete your adventure.